This is Marlin Simon with Duck Soup. Thinking back over my years of sailing. I moved to Miami in 1948 and immediately started playing with boats because we had 3 hurricanes that year in 1948, and there was a lot of wrecked boats. And my parents gave me a hammer and some nails and a saw, and I went just down the street in Coconut Grove and found an old boat that had been washed up, and it was a mess. And I started repairing that and building it, and went to put it in the water, and it immediately sank. And so then I got another boat, and I bought it from somebody who it turned out they'd stolen it. And it was a little double-ended 9-foot lap strake sailing dinghy. And I completely rebuilt that, sanded it up and painted it, put it in the water down there. And interestingly enough, the guy that owned it came by and found it. He had taken it around the world twice, and he had a little sail for it and the whole thing set up. And of course the police came and knocked on our door, and I told them the story, and they said, "Well, you got papers on this?" My dad had said, "You always want to have paperwork on everything you do, you buy and sell." And thankfully, I'd gotten a letter from the guy that I bought the boat from, who had stolen it, and they took me down to the headquarters. The cops were really good to me, and they understood what had happened, and then they ended up going out and picking up the kid that stole the boat, that sold it to me. And from that time on, I was very accurate in keeping track of who I sold what to and getting bills of sale and so on. But after I built a couple rowboats, I found out that it was a lot easier to sail. And just a few months later, this is 1948, maybe it was the beginning of 49, Coconut Grove Sailing Club had a deal to bring kids down and teach them how to sail. And they had the Optimus prams, which were little 8-foot prams. They're the largest sailing class in the world. And they have a little sprit rig on them, a little dagger board in it, rudder on the back, and they're a beautiful one for teaching kids how to sail. A kid from 8 years old to 12 years old or so does real well on them. Anyway, I went down to the sailing club, Coconut Grove Sailing Club, and learned to sail down there. And the first thing they teach you is once you learn how to sail, you have to teach somebody else how to sail. So I picked it up pretty quickly, and then I was teaching somebody else how to sail. From then on, I would take kids out. A lot of kids had never sailed before, and it's a great experience, and it got me into sailing. So I started building sailboats as well as rowboats and so on. And over the years, continuing the pram idea, when I moved to the Keys in 1962, after quitting college and that, I started buying prams. I would go to Miami and buy prams and then sell them to parents and that stuff that had kids. And then I would teach them how to sail. Later on, 1975, actually before that, in the earlier 70s, a group of us were all sailing off Plantation Yacht Harbor. And we had a lot of young kids down there at the time. So I would go to Miami and buy prams, and got a whole fleet of prams sailing down there with the younger kids. In 1975, I was elected Commodore of the Upper Keys Sailing Club, and I was Commodore through 1976. And we continued sailing. I've had all kinds of different sailboats. I've sailed moths and sunfish and sailfish. I've sailed lightnings and thistles, snipes, you name it, different class boats. I've loved racing sailboats all my life, and I still have 2 sunfish right now. Just got rid of my 32-foot Erickson sailboat. But sailing's always been part of me and wanting to pass it on. So in 1987, when we started the church, a friend of mine had 8 prams that he gave me, and I used them with the church. We started the church, and we had a bunch of kids in the church at the time, so I taught all of them how to sail, and we ended up putting a name on each one of them. We did love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and the last one of the gifts of the Spirit is self-controlled. Strangely enough, I never got the 9th boat, so I never got self-controlled, but duck soup. We got to sail the rest of them. Kids love to say, I want this boat or I want that boat. And as a kid myself growing up, we used to say, I want the pink one or I want the green one. And so I figured if I named them the fruits of the Spirit, they could say, I want love, I want joy, I want peace. And that did work out very well, because some of them had better sailing characteristics than others, and kids would get used to what they were sailing in. But I've always loved the sailing part. I taught kids for years and years. And just a few years ago, I gave all those boats to another fellow down in Marathon. So he's still teaching kids how to sail down there. But I had a lot of experiences and a lot of fun, a lot of joy sailing all my life, basically. Well, starting at 10 years old. And I still love it to this day. And if you want to really have some fun and joy, get out there, get on a Hobie Cat when the wind is screaming. I was in a race one time. I had a 16-foot Hobie Cat. And I remember talking to Jack, was on the helm, and I was in the trapeze. And Jack is saying, don't move, don't move. And I said, Jack, I can't move, I won't move. And you literally move yourself an inch or two, and the bow would dig under, and you would catapult, you would cartwheel, or if you move back, the whole boat would go up. And we were in a race off the outside of Plantation Key, and we had a bunch of Hobie Cats, and the wind was blowing over 35. We ended up dumping the boat twice, and we still won the race. Some of the other boats were dismasted. A lot of them turned over. It was an incredible race, but you want adrenaline squirting out your ears, get on a Hobie Cat that's when the wind is really howling, you'll have a time of your life. Anyway, lots of other experiences.